Hello, my name's Tony Collinson and welcome to session 3 of Customising Reaper for voiceovers. Now, when I started doing these tutorials, it was with a view to helping some audiovisual workers have a new piece of software that they might find useful for recording voiceovers. But it's true, what we've been doing all the way through is true for anyone who is producing a voiceover. Now, specifically, I'm just talking to AV workers at the moment who use PTE AV Studio. And if we have a look over here, you can see that under Documents, there is a folder called Pictures to Exe. Now, when you downloaded the software and installed it, PTE placed a folder in your documents called Pictures to Exe, in which are transitions, templates, slide styles, all sorts of things that are associated with the software. Similarly, Reaper, when you downloaded and installed that also placed a folder there called Reaper Media. And although there's nothing in it, we're going to have a look at how that now we are in a position to start recording and saving voiceovers, how they work, how they are saved, and what a file will comprise of. Very much like PTE AV Studio, there is a project file and also there is a rendered file at the end of it, which will be the final audio file. So let's make a start. There are a number of things that we need to do first of all. So let me go to File, Project Settings. And you may recall in our last session, I did say that we needed to, under the Media tab, put Media in here. And I said I would explain it as we went along. Well, this is the point at which we begin to explain it. And what I'm going to do now is to set up some folders which will help us as we go through this session of looking at where and how files are saved. So the first thing that I'm going to suggest that you do is under Documents, I'm going to suggest that you add a new folder and name that folder Reaper Temp Files. Okay, and we're going to set up another couple of folders in there. Where are we? Here we go. Let's just set those up now. First of all, a new folder called Rear Peaks. And another folder called Backups, and that will become clear very shortly. Let's go back to the Reaper Media folder, and here again I'm going to set up some folders. First of all, I'm going to call them one AV, beg your pardon, we better get a new folder selected, a new one called AV Projects, okay, and then another one, Rendered Files, and finally another one which perhaps may or may not be necessary, but we're going to set it up anyway, called Uncategorized. Right, now once we've got these set up, and I'm going to go back to Reaper Media here to start with, so that we can see the ones that we've got. The ones that we've just created are there, and the temporary ones there. So let's have a look at what happens when we start a project. I'm going to double click on AV Projects because that's where we want it to be. Let's start a new project here. So File, New Project. No, we don't want to save the previous one, and let's save it. So File, Save Project as First AV Project, and we're going to save it into this folder here, which is the Reaper Media AV Projects, which is what we've got set up over here in the Windows Explorer. Now, you can see that what's happened is we have a folder that says first AV project, and everything to do with that project will be within this folder. In the folder we have first AV projects RPP. Anything that we have within this folder, this is the project file. This is the equivalent to the PTE file in PTE AV Studio. It holds all the information about recordings, effects, and anything else that goes on within the project. Right, let's have a look at media. Now, you remember we set up media, so I'm going to double click that. There's nothing in there. Let's make a couple of recordings. The mixer. That's 1. That's 2. And I'll disarm the mixer again. So you can see now under the media folder we have 4 files. The WAV files are the actual recordings that we made. The items on the track are these WAV files here. These repix files are really redundant. They are temporary files and we can delete them, and it doesn't make a heap of a difference. Select that and delete. Oh, it's deleting the name. Let's just delete the file. Delete the file, and it doesn't make any difference whatsoever to what we've got. And we are going to put those within our temporary files as we go along and set things up. Now if I go back here, we have a backup file, and I set that at 1 minute, which is why we now have a backup file. And every minute a backup file will be created. Now these we can save and we may come back to them. I've never found a need to do that yet, but you may want to come back to them. They do have a timestamp date on it, so they are findable. So, but these are going to put, we're going to put those in the backups folder, but we have Reaper do that automatically, and it saves us continually deleting them from our project. So let's have a look how we can set things up. I'm going to delete first project now, and just make sure that we've nothing else in it. No, there's nothing else in there. There's nothing else in there. Right, let's go to our options and preferences, and here I'm going to set a few parameters. Under the projects tab, I'm going to suggest that we ought to prompt each time we set up a new project to save it and give it a name, similarly to what we've just done. So I'll check that box there. I did say that I'd set this to 1 minute so that you could see the backup files being created. That you can set to whatever you want. Let's say every 5 minutes for argument's sake. One of the things that we don't want to do is to put the backup files in the project directory. So I'm going to uncheck that. We actually did uncheck it earlier on, but just to demonstrate its purpose, I'm going to uncheck that, and I'm going to save to timestamp file in additional directory. I need to browse for that. And here we go, D drive, where's Reaper? Reaper Media Documents, here we go. Reaper Media Backups, and that's where we're going to save them. So that's part of it set, and the reason that we use that particular format. Okay, now the other thing I've checked are these 2 boxes here. They weren't checked to start with, so we need to have those 2 checked. And let's have a look now at our project. Those are the ones on a project. We've got all those set up. Let's have a look now on paths. And this is where we actually set up where we want items to be saved. So the default path for new projects, again, we're going to go through the same process. Documents, Reaper Media this time, and we want them to be in our AV projects folder. So we've set that there. Now this one, I'm going to set it up, but what will probably happen, well, let me set it up first of all and then I'll explain. Again, go through this process, finding the folder, documents, Reaper Media, and we're going to go for the rendered files. When we go back to Reaper itself and produce a project, I'll just explain what else we can do there. Alright, so a default path, recording path, when project is unsaved and no recording path is configured. This is where we put the uncategorized. This is for when perhaps we do something, we don't want to save it, we think, well, we're just checking something out, and then all of a sudden, having closed it all down, think, well, that would have been a good idea to save that. This is where it will be saved in uncategorized. Okay. Now, the rear peaks, or repeaks, whichever you want to call it, we don't want to store them on in our app data file on our C drive. So I'm going to store these on a separate path, which we've already set up in Reaper temp files. So browse, not in application data. No, I don't want it in there. This PC, my D drive, documents, it might be your C drive. It depends if you've got a couple of drives. Repeaks, rear peaks. Okay. And really, that's about all there is, apart from one more thing. When we record a file, we get information of the file, and those were those figures that I told you. We looked at the date, etc. It would be nice to have the project name at the side of each recording so we can associate them with a recording. So I'm putting the cursor at the front of this list here. I'm going to the wildcards, and I'm going to select from project information, project, and just put a hyphen at the side of it. And that is more or less Reaper set up. So let's apply that and say OK. So Reaper Media's here. Select AV projects. And I'm going to create a new project, file, new project. Do we want to save that last one? No, we don't. And what happens is we now are prompted to save our project. But before we do, just check down here and make sure that these two boxes, that they are checked. Because what will happen, as we saw as we made that short project just a second or two ago, it will create a subdirectory for us with the name of the project, and any media that's associated with the project will be placed within that folder. So let's call this Project 2 for want of a better description. We're going to save it in AV Projects, Save. And we'll see that now we have a folder for our AV called Project 2. Within that folder, we have our project file, and we also have our media. So we've no recordings there. Let's just do a couple as we did before. Record. Stop. Okay, so we now have, let me disarm again. We now have our two files in here, our WAV files, but you see that now we no longer have the repeats file because they will be in here. And I don't think we've probably left it long enough yet, but the backup files, they will start to appear in this folder here, but I've set it up to 5 minutes now, so it will be 5 minutes before they arrive in that folder. But that's where the backups will appear, so we can always get to those if we need them. And our AV project is here. Now, to render, what happens if we render this file? Well, let's go up here to File and Render Projects. Render here, that's what we want to do, render. Those are the projects that I've rendered previously. So we go to render, and what happens when we do this is it asks for a directory. If we just render, it will take them to our rendered files and it will call it Project 2. However, we may wish to save it to our audio-visual folder, which will contain all of our images and any videos. Anything else that we're going to put into our audio-visual will be in our PTE folder, our Pictures to Exit folder, where we're creating our AV. If we wish, we can browse for that and put that folder in there. Can I make a suggestion that actually you leave it default in the rendered files? It will have its name with it. You can then go to the rendered folder and make a copy, and you've got at least a backup on the drive that you're working on. So if I were to do this, I would just say render file and it will send it to the default. Let's do that. And it's probably already done it because there's very little in there, and say close. So if I go to rendered files folder now, it has saved it as a WAV file, a rendered project. So anything and everything that was in that folder in our AV projects, project 2 media folder, and anything that the project has picked up will now be saved. And that's it. What a fantastic piece of software this is. I do hope these tutorials have been helpful. It's a long haul to get to this point. I'm just going to, let's go to AV projects again. Let's file, we'll just save the project because there's something in there. Let's say save project, file, new project, and we're prompt to give it a title, and these boxes remain checked. So we'll call this Project Reaper. I'm making up names here, and I'm going to save it in AV projects. Here we go. And we now have our second project. So in our audio-visual projects, our voiceover for our AV called Project 2, not that we're likely to call one that, or Project Reaper, everything will be in these folders. We will have everything set up for our effects when we record. They're all there. We set them up in session 2, I believe. Session 1 was it? Session 1 we set them up, but we set up the, just to go through it to recap, we set up our screen layout, we set up our tracks, we set up our projects and all the templates, and now it all comes into fruition. I do hope these tutorials have been helpful. Hopefully there's been something there that's helped you along the way, and that you find this piece of software as useful and as good as I believe it to be.